Hey guys, welcome to Talking Roll Express episode 6 in your house, Degeneration X. I'm Lewis, joined by Thomas, Oliver, and hopefully not for the last time, Cammy. A few facts about the DX show before we begin. It was the 19th edition of the In Your House produced by WWF at the time. It was preceded by Bad Blood and would be followed by No Way Out of Texas. That occurred on December 7th, 1997 at the Springfield Civic Center in Springfield, Massachusetts. Drawing an audience of 6,538 people. It was made up of 8 matches, giving it a 2 hour 45-minute runtime. On commentary, for the first time at the In Your House pay-per-view, just Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. Match-wise, we have Taka Michinoku versus Dan Christopher for the light heavyweight title. Los Pericles versus DOA, Butterbean versus Matt Merrill, the New Age Outlaws versus LOD for the tag titles, Triple H versus Sergeant Slaughter, Jeff Jarrett versus The Undertaker, Stone Cold versus The Rock for the IC title, and Ken Shamrock versus Shawn Michaels for the WWF title. Right, guys, initial impressions of this pay-per-view.
It's a good pay-per-view. It's not a 5-star classic, but in terms of the actual match card and the content you get in return from it, it was an enjoyable pay-per-view. Some matches failed to live up to expectations, but all in all, and in terms of the main event as well, it was a really enjoyable pay-per-view.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a much better pay-per-view than I remember it, especially coming off the back in Montreal, and you've got your first post-Montreal pay-per-view and your first Brett-less pay-per-view of this kind of era. There's a kind of lot of expectation on it, but yeah, I thought it was okay for what it was.
Personally, I don't know how happy I would have been if I'd been there and paid for it, but, you know, I enjoyed watching it back up until a certain point, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on.
What do you guys make of the actual DX set from a production design standpoint? I absolutely hate it. I wish I said this originally, but what I'd done was obviously all the In Your Houses prior to this, besides Bad Blood, they had the actual house set where it was like they came out the back of the home. What I'd wished they'd actually done for DX was like a trashed version of the house. Like obviously have the windows panned in and had like, you know, DX spray painted on the side. I think a little thing that it would have. Nice.
Yeah, it was a really low quality set, to be honest. It's just.
Well, I don't mind the big silver X. It's like the little green small case D.
Yeah. Why is there a low case D? When has there ever been a low case D in DX?
I think it was kind of, you watch a low budget movie that thinks it's a high budget movie, so it's filled with like really bad CGI. That's what this was like. They tried to do this big massive production and didn't have the money.
No, it felt like they did the CGI and just forgot to add it, so there's just absolutely fuck all in the arena.
Maybe they got the measurements wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Spinal Tap.
Yeah, all on the D's. Here's the D. That's a small D. Yeah. Maybe we could use this joke as part of the show. No, that's too obvious. Maybe that was a joke.
It'd been interesting to see how long they would have had to actually prepare it and how long they knew it was going to be like a DX-themed show. I'm not familiar on that myself, but it could have had something to do with it maybe. I don't think there's much excuse for that though. Again, it would have been much quicker just to trash the old set. Yeah,
and that'd have looked really cool as well, to be fair. I've seen that, but you've got to laugh as well. I kind of mentioned Montreal and also the Brett's at this point. The first pay-per-view after Survivor Series is a DX-themed one.
I was going to say, maybe the production design came from a budget standpoint. Like, Vince, we don't have enough money for 2 capital letters. So we just got to go with one smaller one.
That's got to be it.
God damn it, pal.
Just make the D smaller, they won't notice.
Right, going into the Taka Michinoku versus Brian Christopher match, what do you guys make of Brian Christopher as a talent?
Do you know what's funny, actually? I always remember Brian Christopher as being too cool, like big fan favourite, babyface, you know, came out dancing with Scotty 2 Hotty and Rikishi. I forgot how hateful a heel he actually was. He was really, really good because he was so over the top as a heel that you just couldn't like him.
I think the daddy's boy angle was really good as well. So when they started chanting Jerry's kid and he just jumped up on the top rope and started losing his shit at them, that was really good. But I think the fact that he was Jerry Lawler's son in that match was too on the nose. So when Lawler came out and started, you know, like wiping him down and everything, I thought that was that was a bridge too far, to be honest. Like, you could have played up to the nepotism and the fact that he's his kid without being that on the nose.
It felt really cartoonish. Like, he was doing good up to that point that Jerry got involved, and then it almost just shown that Jerry can do this 10 times better than you.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel like I wanted to be watching him instead. Where if you actually played it as a hard heel, a bit more serious kind of thing, again with the nepotism and stuff, it probably would have been a heck of a lot more effective and a lot more interesting as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, when he came out, I was like, well, is he going to jump in the ring and start going for him? So yeah.
I didn't really mind it, to be fair, but it kind of gave me an impression of something that worked a lot better in Memphis, like a smaller territory, and you're kind of getting that old school heel heat type idea, whereas, especially on this pay-per-view at this time, it did seem a bit kind of jarring. But going back to Brian Christopher quickly, I just love the fact that it doesn't come out kissing his muscles, he licks them. He starts French kissing his biceps.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The difference in physiques here is absolutely staggering. Like, compared to Taka Michinoku, Brian Christopher looks like Warrior.
There is no way that he should be in any light heavyweight. Yeah, in any context, even professional wrestling.
Did anyone notice the laser pointer as well?
I didn't notice it during this match, no.
Yeah, it was about midway through the match. Someone started like throwing a laser pointer on them. And that really got me back in focus.
It was more distracting when Jeff Jarrett came out with the white cape, but I did notice it in this match.
Yeah, it was in this match.
I was going to say, there's some really good stuff in this. There's a really great looking moonsault by Taka. I'm confused with Taka.
So can you imagine a gimmick called Taker Michinoku? How awesome would that be?
Now that you mention it, it's more surprising that it didn't happen. But yeah, I really enjoyed him in this match. He was the standout star for me.
There was a lot of impressive stuff, especially within the context. When you put it next to all the other matches, it was a great match. But if you compare it to the the cruiserweight division, for instance, in WCW, which is clearly what this is kind of going for, giving the smaller guys something to do, and at the same time maybe a faster paced match, it just doesn't really measure up to me. I liked the addition of Taka Michinoku. I wasn't too familiar with the program leading up to this, but he seemed to be quite over. There seemed to be a lot of room for him to do stuff, but after doing a bit of Googling and seeing what happened afterward, it didn't seem like they used him all that much, really. It was kind of disappointing.
I don't think they had room to use him back then as well. Like, I'm thinking more into the 2000s. You'd have the cruiserweights going against the big guys as well.
Yeah.
This, it felt like they'd get a couple of little guys together and just not really utilise them. And like you said, they were doing it much better in WCW at the time. Yeah,
I made a pointer here. Did WWF even really need a light heavyweight title at this point? Because as many light heavyweights as they had Taka, and later on they would have Aguila, and they would have that great match at Mania 14. But outside of Taka and Aguila, I can't really think of really any cruiserweights for 1997, no less.
Scott Putski came out and his knee fell off. And they found it in his thigh.
Oh.
That was, it never felt like. I mean, the cruiserweight divisions you mentioned, Cammy, was great. You would tune it in Nitro to see the cruiserweights. They really kind of built the show around them in a kind of mid-card setting. But here, it felt like they had a belt and an idea for a division, but no actual wrestlers for it. I think a lot of these guys that came in for the tournament, you saw them like once and that was it.
Well, referencing again that sort of like space thing, if you even just look at the show, I don't think I've ever seen, was it what was Rock and stuff fighting for? The Intercontinental Championship, yeah. I mean, I've not seen that so over in the modern era at all, kind of thing. So to have kind of Austin and Rock in that sort of realm, even though Rock kind of wasn't where he should have been at that point, and then to have Michaels up in the championship, already it seems like it's kind of a filled program, eh? They've obviously just added it in to compete once again, kind of thing.
What do you guys make of the light heavyweight title from a purely aesthetic standpoint? I think it's one of the better looking belts that the company's ever had.
I agree with that.
Yeah, just a shame they had nobody to wear it.
It's got a nice classic look.
Can we talk about Brian Christopher getting Sabu levels of juice in this match? Like, he busts his gum open on the guardrail and proceeds to just bleed.
Yeah, and it's
far too much.
I don't know if I just lost focus for a second, but yeah, one moment he's completely fine, and the next he's like jam red.
I quite like the fact that he was clearly professional enough to use it, for a bit more drama kind of thing. Not kind of like what you get in the modern day where they'll again, Vince will run out with a hanky and then he'll wipe your chin kind of thing. It made it a bit more interesting, because at that point I was tuning out a little bit.
Yeah, he used it correctly.
Mm.
Taka wins with the Michinoku driver, gets a standing ovation from the crowd. Nice little tip there. What did you guys make of this match? I thought it was a nice little. I mean, it wasn't a barn burner, but it got the ball rolling. I'll give that a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, it was the right opening match.
Yeah, I agree with both. That probably gave me about a 3.5 as well. It did, but it had to do. It warmed the crowd up.
I think Brian Christopher couldn't keep up pace-wise. Again, he's just too heavy to kind of to go at Taka's rate sort of thing. So I kind of put it at a 2 out of 5 because it didn't even feel like he was heel slowing the match down. It just felt like he actually couldn't keep up, and it kind of stopped it from really kicking the show off, and which is a shame because the next few matches for me anyway really could have used that. Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
Immediately after this, we get the Los Pericos Disciples Apocalypse. I don't know anything more we can say about this feud. I mean, we've had to suffer through it thrice now. I mean, there's just no point, is there?
All I can say is, on my bucket list, I want not only to compete in a wrestling match, I want to ride a motorcycle down to the ring, and that is all I'm saying on this match.
This is how many times have you seen these guys fight over the course of about half a year? Every pay-per-view,
this is the third time they're fighting, and there's a deafening silence for Los Pericos. They don't even have any heel heat. The only kind of rise from the crowd I'm convinced that DOA got was because they came to the ring in motorbikes. It has to be that.
They're not fighting for anything either. There's no
fighting for territory.
Yeah, the gang angle.
Yeah, but at least put some belts on them or something.
Oh no, let's not go crazy.
Or like a box of guns or something, or some karate fighters. Let's put some substance behind it. Let's give them something. I don't know, like whoever wins can ride the motorcycles out of the ring or something. I don't know.
Do you know I didn't actually mind this match too much? I think my expectations were so low. I was like, it's actually all right.
Yeah, I didn't hate this match, but at the same time, I didn't want to watch it.
No, I didn't want to watch it. I agree with that.
You're in trouble when King and Jim Ross both use the word train wreck. Before the match has even started.
They were really not putting this over. There was a great line from JR just confirming they're such a good team. He references catch as catch can wrestling style, and then immediately goes, "We're not going to see any of that here." And it's just brutal. And then starts. I think I wrote down he pointed out a sidewalk slam, and then just wrote nothing fancy about that. Like
because he did it, and JR said a sidewalk slam, and I was like, is it? Or did he just drop him?
It's maybe a solution to all of this would have been the guys are all too big to establish any sort of pace. I think I've already brought this up, but then maybe just bring in just throw Brian Christopher in there to be a bit quicker, or Taka or something, like start merging those teams so that we can get something, because it was so slow.
I think for me, when the match started as well, my expectations were really, really low, and the best worker in that ring was sent to the back before the match started.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. But to be fair, I watched it and I thought it was actually okay. It felt like a dart match more than anything. But it was just punch, kick, headlock, punch, kick, power move, over type thing. It was better than I thought it would be. It wasn't a good match, but it was better than expected.
I feel compelled to point out now, just before we move on, but this feud lasted 4 months. What logical reason could they have for a lower card feud like this lasting 4 months.
Did anybody win in the end, or did just the viewer lose?
We all lost. I remember Edge on his debut injured. One of the last week was on Raw.
I knew there was
reason
a
to
reason I
like
liked
him.
him.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's what ended it. Edge ended the gang warfare.
Excellent.
Well, we get Miguel apparently injuring his knee after doing the accident, of all things. I couldn't believe it. Before I found out it was a work, I was actually praying that he was legitimately injured so that we could get the go home spot and this match would just finish. I've never prayed for a wrestler to be injured so hard.
It's a tough sell when you don't have the fake medics run down to the ring, though. Like, the whole time, having completely just written this match out from memory, I wasn't sure either until I started thinking, well, clearly this is, and so you just sit halfway through the match just waiting for it to happen.
But then I didn't realise it was a work until you just said, like, I just spent the whole match being like, has he just tried to do something? Did he not warm up? Has he, like, just pulled his, like, hamstring or something?
It would have made more sense if it was 4-on-3 and one of the guys gets injured and then you think, oh, who's he genuinely injured here? But you've got 2-on-3, but you've got the heel team being at a disadvantage. And that never works in a handicap match.
Yeah, it's just...
I also don't think that, obviously, the storylines went on for 4 months, so we're more than aware of who's heel and who's face. I don't think there was actually enough work in the match to convey exactly what was going on. You've got two factions that are both gangs, and it's just difficult to try and figure out exactly what's going on, sort of thing. Like, for me, I watched out of context, so I haven't had the pleasure of watching the entire run up to this, and I was kind of struggling a little bit.
There is no pleasure to be had.
So maybe context would help, but even then,
yeah,
I just don't want them to fight over it. Like, I know it's wrestling, I know they're meant to, like, hate each other and fight, but surely they could just resolve this one with a handshake.
I mean, I think the context was you've got the black militant Nation of Domination, you've got the white biker gang, we'll just leave it at that, and Los Boricuas, who I don't really know what was happening there, apart from Savio Vega was Mexican and they wanted to give him a little Latino heat.
Yeah, Los Boricuas get the win. The feud dies immediately after that. This has to be the worst feud of '97. I can't imagine anything. I've never wanted to watch two guys work less.
Yeah.
Or 4-on-4 guys work less than this.
The only saving grace from this match, and let us speak. No crush. No crush.
Oh, no crush. Okay. I will say the finish brings it up from a 1 out of 5 to a 2 out of 5 to me. That's what I'm going to rate it. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I like the sneaky finish, but apart from that, yeah, it was definitely a wrestling match that happened on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think in terms of seeing it, you're talking about in context, because it's seen it in context of the other two matches we'd watched in the last few weeks. This was like a 6-star Tokyo Dome effort. But so when I say I enjoyed it, don't mistake that for me thinking it's a good match. I think Freddy versus Jason takes Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan is a terrible film, but I do enjoy it. This is like that. So bad it's good.
Out of context for me, I was already hoping for more from that first match, and now then sort of hitting this kind of brick wall, it was like a 1 out of 5. Like, I really kind of struggled with this one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it wasn't a classic.
In fact, the shave your back, that'll take up to a 2. I enjoyed that, the shave your back chance. I'm sure you've put up with 4 months of it, but I enjoyed that one a little bit.
Right after this, we get Mark Miro versus Butterbean. I feel like Mark Miro kind of slips into that Ken Shamrock Vader thing about this guy could have been money had they just spent a little bit more time with him. He's got a look, he can talk, he could move. He just seemed to tick all the boxes, but I can't imagine for whatever reason he just never made it.
Politics, I imagine the fact that they liked Sable more than him and wanted him at the picture, which is a shame because his heel work was excellent. And as you say, the good talker, and interrupted the interview with Sable and the trash talking he did, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah, he really loved the business, so it's surprising to see that he didn't make it.
It's nice to see. I'm also a big fan of mixed martial arts, so anyone that has a credible sort of fighting pedigree, even if it is somewhat dubious, I'm pretty sure he was a Golden Gloves winner. It was pretty impressive, and everything I've seen from him, he's been a good worker. But even just being shoved into this program, it's impossible to look past how ridiculous it is. Like it's horrible. From Butterbean being gloved up in the promo, I couldn't help but thinking if this was like a real life kind of thing, just putting my Mark head on for a second, like how does he take a piss? How does he eat a protein bar? Like I was enjoying how dramatic it was getting very quickly and how much they were reinforcing the fact that it wasn't a boxing match.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not usually a fan of these kind of gimmick matches where it's not a wrestling match. And fans usually aren't either. They go to a wrestling show to watch a wrestling show, and when they try and do like a boxing or an MMA type thing, it usually falls flat. The worst thing I've ever seen was TNA. I believe it was Frank Trigg versus AJ Styles in an amateur wrestling match. And it was horrendous. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. This wasn't too bad.
It wasn't unpalatable. Like, the premise of it is ridiculous. The gimmick was ridiculous, but I didn't end up hating it.
I think it was the fact that Mark Merrow really kind of made it. I mean, but Butterbean did the best he could without killing him. And
I think it was round 3. It looked like he was starting to kind of hate the guy. Like he was throwing. I did not feel good for him.
Because didn't something like Big Show and Floyd Mayweather have a match?
Yeah. I never seen the match, but I seen the build up to it when Big Show said, "Break my nose and then run."
Yeah, it's just this. Comparing that to this feels legit. This actually feels like a contest. But if I want to watch wrestling, I want to watch wrestling. I can understand bringing like an MMA fighter in because I can sort of understand the ground game, having like a submission based match for that, but bringing in Butterbean. What are you doing?
There's two things.
The concept of a worked boxing match is kind of from the start. There's no palatable. In fact, I'm going to give it an extra star just entirely based on 2 half stars. 1 half star is for the little infographic that says Mark Merrow equals black trunks and Butterbean equals black, white, and blue trunks, red, white, and blue trunks. I was like, I'm pretty sure that the guy that looks like a Butterbean is Butterbean. Because I can't imagine Mark Merrow being called Butterbean. But
even if you took someone who never watched wrestling, sat him in front of that match, and was like, right, Mark Merrow is going to fight Butterbean. Tell me who Butterbean is. They'd be like, the big bald baby guy is Butterbean.
I mean, it's been a while since I've watched WrestleMania 2. Did Mr. T not fight Roddy Piper in a worked boxing match as well? I mean, this isn't a new concept, and obviously not long after this, Brawl for All was born. But in terms of a worked boxing match, I thought this was actually okay. I'd maybe get a 2.5. Mostly due to kind of Merrow's heel work as well, and Butterbean doing pretty good considering it's no his forte.
I'll give it 1.5 just because I enjoy seeing Butterbean.
I like Butterbean.
Yeah.
I just think there's two things that people struggle to do. I mean, you see countless examples in any pay-per-view of people that struggle to throw worked punches. So why are you going to then try and do a worked boxing match? And it just doesn't make any sense to myself. But at the same time, they got to name drop Oscar De La Hoya. They got brand recognition from the event the night before. So it was probably quite successful endeavour for them. So for that, I mean, I will actually just give it 2 stars because it couldn't have hurt them any. It hurt us, but I don't think it hurt the company at all.
That's a very good point, and you kind of find that with these kind of stunts as they appeal to a wider audience, while simultaneously pissing off their core audience.
Yeah, I mean, on a world stage level at that point, like Ken Shamrock is not a star. He's a legitimate fighter. But with UFC and where martial arts were at that point, he didn't have much star power other than the fact it was a crossover. But to bring Butterbean over, who not only was on legitimate boxing pay-per-views, but also kind of an underground vibe sort of thing, especially paired that with the Attitude Era. It's quite a successful pairing.
There's a bit where Butterbean's in the corner and obviously he's getting the traditional kind of sprayed down coach talk. I heard there was a Scottish accent. I'm almost positive that was talking to him. I was trying to work out if that was actually Jim Watt or not, like, you know, the boxing commentator. It kind of sounded like him. I don't know if you've ever seen the Jim episode of Still Game, but obviously he's in that.
Speaking of the corners, actually, did Mark Merrill, like, did he have, I don't think they were real corner men, because one bit he was looking for a spit bucket and he's not got it, so he just goes and spits behind his shoulder into the the ring.
The last thing I wrote about this match was Mike Chioda is to refereeing what Dominic Cummings is to staying in the house.
Yes.
Nice.
So it was that, and Butterbean has the laziest revenge run of all time. Like the bit where he's running to the gorilla position, it was okay. He didn't even really seem that bothered that he'd just been smacked about the house.
Do you know what I do love? Sorry, Cammy.
I still wouldn't want to see him running at me, regardless of how fast he was running.
Yeah, you might trip.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't want to run the risk of him catching me.
The funny thing is, I always love these kind of revenge runs though, and if the curtain opens a little bit too much, and you literally do peek behind the curtain, and you just see him kind of stop and walk casually.
To be fair, I think Butterbean thrown his glove off, and from the bottom of the ramp to the top, thrown it, and definitely hit someone in the face. I'm certain of that. So, I mean, that alone was impressive enough. I'll give it 3 stars now, actually. That I remember my jaw hitting the floor there.
I just love that this wasn't even the last terrible thing that Butterbean did with the WWF.
I mean, what he did next, I'll keep going back to that. You know, the fact that it was basically a shoot. You know, again, it doesn't hurt the company; it hurts other people. But
yeah, it's impossible to review on total because it's not even really a wrestling match, is it? I mean,
no. There's not a lot to go over, unfortunately, other than the fact that I think a stool across the back would have hurt anybody. It didn't even look that worked, to be fair.
Yeah.
Then I think Butterbean's back may have actually been a bit cut. If I was Mark Merrill, I would have ran as well.
100%.
Right, getting on to the real highlight of this show, Goldust reading the Green Eggs and Ham segment. What did you guys make of Taka Goldust? Because I think it started here and it wouldn't end until well after Mania 14. I'm sure this just is so uncomfortable.
I think, to be honest, you haven't seen a better look over 12 seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race.
It definitely, I mean, I don't think they had much other plans for him, but I think it hurt Taka just as much as anything else done, being paired with him. Goldust, other than some decent sort of shots of him dressed up in his gear, really wasn't doing much at this point, kind of thing.
It just seems like WWF Creative has always had it in for Dustin Rhodes. Like, he's always been saddled with him. He's been forced to basically work with nothing.
Or any member of the Rhodes family, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it feels like it would have actually been better for his career if he'd have just walked down and just never come back. Because watching all of these, I don't think Goldust has ever had a good deal, to be honest.
See, I disagree. I think I love the Goldust character, and it's a character that when you kind of sort of first come into wrestling, it was a very different time in the world as well, and obviously the homophobic elements to it were really kind of played up, and kind of embarrassingly so. We watch a lot of it back. But you've got Dustin Rhodes, this like legitimate tough guy Texan, really playing this role brilliantly, and the longevity. I mean, he could argue about he didn't really get the push he was deserved and stuff, but he was in that character for about 20 years at a consistent level. There was wee road bumps along the way. Obviously, this version of him was horrific, but overall, I mean, what a run he had with that character.
I think for this promo in general, the two things that I could think that, you know, they would have been aiming for would be, you know, that kind of heelish. If the Knight was sitting there at a quick pace, the heel would come and then just slow it down. But then obviously the Knight has been at a snail's pace already, so that doesn't make any sense. or maybe the fact that, again, kind of reinforcing what you just said there, they were in Massachusetts. But I cannot say that. I'm not even going to try. You know, I'm sure homophobia was maybe a little bit more rife there at the time than maybe some other of the states they visited. It could have been just to get the crowd a wee bit hotter, but I don't think it achieved in any of that, to be honest with you.
I think it was too confusing. If you just brought Goldust out and his Goldust character, that's all you need to kind of play up to that fact. But I don't know what they were trying to go for when they came out with that. It was just bizarre for the sake of being bizarre.
Last thing I jotted down about this, I'm pretty sure Luna Vachon calls him a scum fuck. Because after it, you hear Jerry go, did she just say... I'm pretty sure she dropped the F-bomb, and they just, because her voice was so bristled, they couldn't tell that she dropped the F-bomb.
Let's hope Vince doesn't watch this podcast, because he'll go back to the network and try and edit it out.
We know he does. He's already bringing back ECW and In Your House.
That's true. You're just trolling him now on that T-shirt.
Repping the colours. Yeah, right. So, New Age Outlaws versus Legion of Doom. Feels like, I mean, obviously it doesn't feel like, we know the LOD weren't really used at this point, and if they were used, they were disappointing. But I feel like one of the things that kind of hurt LOD, it wasn't them, it was the lack of other tag teams at this point, because you haven't got tag teams, you've got factions. It's all teams of 3 and 4. So you haven't really got very good 2-on-2 chemistry. You would have this actually, I think it's one of the worst periods for tag teams. And then you would get that big resurgence later on with like Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys and that. But yeah, this is not a great time for tag teams right here.
It kind of reminded me of kind of rewinds a heck of a lot later when the Dudley Boys came back not too long ago to kind of work with all the teams that were there, because they were sort of lacking in both performance and just the tag team scene in general was kind of missing out. But then it kind of almost looked like, because I mean their promo just hit you like a bucket of water to the face. It was so 80s kind of thing. It came out of nowhere. It was almost just like old versus new age. I think that's maybe kind of what they were going for. But then again, I'm not going to make excuses for them. You know, especially with what happened like a few months later and stuff with playing up to certain angles and stuff.
Yeah, but I felt that as well, actually, when you got to that kind of promo, and it was only 2 months after the Bad Blood pay-per-view where they didn't seem out of place at all. And now in December, it was very cartoony. And I mean, the Road Warriors are a tag team that could have been really reworked with just wee tweaks here and there to fit into this kind of new this Attitude Era style. But yeah, it was very kind of like WrestleMania 7 to me.
I feel like the Road Warriors would probably have had to drop the big red shoulder spikes and kind of scratchy logo WWF. I know, like, their whole presentation with the haircuts and that was, I think, was maybe just a bit too cartoony for even January of '98.
But you see the Road Warriors come in with the black shoulder pads with the silver spikes. They just look more badass and less cartoony right off the bat. And that's a wee simple change.
What do you guys make of the New Age Outlaws?
In general?
Yeah, just in general.
They definitely weren't on form here anyway. I mean, and I feel like there's more examples of that than there is them actually, you know, getting when it was all at its peak and stuff. There was definitely a value to them, but I think there's just too much of, for me personally, I'm not into the DX humor. You know, I don't think it works too much in regards to face versus heel, especially with some of the angles they went for. And when you've already got Michaels and Hunter, it just seemed a bit kind of tacked on a wee bit. Yeah, especially if you add like X-Pac into that as well.
Yeah, I didn't care much for the DXB team.
Yeah, I don't even think they were part of DX at this point, were they? I think this was the kind of...
I think like the week or the fortnight after this, they maybe kind of, I know they did something with Sean in China and that with the Attack the Road Warriors, but
I always thought the New Age Outlaws as a tag team were very overrated, but I did like the characters. I liked the promos.
Well, I really like Billy Gunn as a talent. I feel like he kind of gets buried a lot. I think his selling is really, really good. Sell-wise, he's actually up there with like Flair and Michaels and Hennig and that. I really feel like he's one of the more underrated sellers there's ever been.
From what I've read and seen, the company liked him as well, hence why he got that face push a couple of years later. But then athletically, he's got like asthma problems or something, which is why he works better in a tag team, because he can be switched out and then recover and come back in. Whereas when they tried to put him in longer form matches, he struggled and just couldn't keep up with. I mean, at the time you were trying to keep up with The Rock and stuff, who are just seriously athletic.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Did he not work with The Rock at SummerSlam '99? I'm sure he did.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm going to give this an extra star based on Hawk selling the styrofoam at the back. That really was amazing. There's not too many guys that sell styrofoam at the back anymore.
So it takes a real worker to do that.
Yeah, Jim Ross drops the government mule line, so I came up with that. I've got to give that an extra half star based on that. There's a really confusing finish where Henry Godwin comes in and starts assaulting Hawk, and obviously the New Age Outlaws get the win. It's a bizarre finish aside, I'll give it maybe a 2.5 out of 5. It feels like a very middle of the road kind of match.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, to be honest. It's not terrible, but I'm not off my seat with it. It's very much a mid-card match.
Yeah, it's very forgettable, unfortunately.
They spend too much time not actually wrestling, and when they do, it's the most basic of moves, the type of thing that someone would learn maybe in a wrestling camp or something. To me, it was just a non-match, but I'm pretty sure they mentioned at this. Well, the commentating team mentioned at the start he was ill, and I'm pretty sure I've heard that in other podcasts as like in a shoot that he actually Billy Gunn saw he was actually ill, and he didn't spend a lot of time active here, which would maybe explain the pace, but I didn't enjoy it, to be honest. It's another 1 out of 5 for me.
1.5, I would get.
1.5 if I'm being polite, yeah, probably, but.
Right, Sergeant Slaughter versus Triple H. When they're doing the opening video package to try and hype up the match, they show footage from Hiroshima. I mean, we often talk about, the Attitude Era WWF not actually being that shocking, but that was a real sort of, that was a jaw-dropping moment right there. Slaughter is 49 years old here, and it's quite funny, there's a comment that he's 10 years past his prime. Oh, how the hunter has become the hunted, hasn't it? Quite literally. Brimps. I love that. I mean, we'll get into this later, but the Undertaker episode with the Rick Crown Joe, and I think Hunter is either 48 or 49 now. I loved that little thing about coming back to bite him in the ass.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that myself.
I just thought that, that this kind of reinforced my kind of thinking that they're trying to maybe put old guys versus new, and if Vince hadn't burned so many bridges moving from the golden generation, they actually could have maybe had some actual workers who are instead now in WCW, which is a shame. The fact that they had to actually put a promo up to give the audience context as to who Sergeant Slaughter was is ridiculous. And then the fact that it was just a montage of rest holds and headlocks is even more ridiculous. Like, I should be excited. It was just crazy. The Triple H's promo, the point where he told the camera man, clearly just ad-libbed because he was moving over to China. He said, "Put the camera on me, idiot," was the best part about his promo. You can tell there's such a green feeling to his patter, trying to get it across. Like there's no confidence yet, but that one little seed was quite good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, like looking at later Triple H promos, there was a lot of dominance and aggression to it. This was more, he is just like weaseling at the camera. And that bit where he said, "Put the camera on me, idiot." You're like, oh yeah, I remember you. You're Triple H.
Totally.
Yeah, I like this kind of era Triple H because before that, we'll see all that after that, you've got the aggression, the game, pure badass. Before it, you had the blue blood, snob. This kind of transition, it felt like that posh kid everybody knows that thinks they're a bit of a badass.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I really think he suited him.
It feels like Slaughter should have had a stand-in for this match. Like, he should have been acting as the manager for somebody else who should have worked with Hunter and maybe might have maintained a bit of a faster pace. I'm thinking of big faces at the time, and obviously you know me being the big Vader mark that I am, I much prefer Vader have worked with Hunter, because I think that would have been a real barn burner had they really tried it. If you guys chose a stand-in for this time, who would you guys have picked?
I actually agree with you and say, well, when you look at the card as well, who could you have had to stand in? Who's a big face? Yeah, it's Vader as well, and of course Vader's the big guy, and he can turn around and be like, right, I'm bringing Big Van Vader in to teach you a lesson. He's doing this whole thing about taking Triple H to boot camp. He's a little puke, he's a little snark. So you just get the big man to come in to teach you a lesson.
I quite liked this match.
Oh.
I quite enjoyed it. I like the story kind of building up to it. I remember at the time I quite liked it because this was DX at infancy when they weren't attacking authority figures, and then they was attacking authority figures in this way, slagging his wife, his kind of sexual innuendo jokes and all that. It was a really it was on the cusp of something, and the whole kind of like the young, arrogant upstart versus the old veteran. From a story point of view, I quite liked it.
I like the story of it, but the actual match content was really poor. Like, I never thought I'd watch a wrestling match where one of the most exciting bits is when he throws a shoe at his head.
For me, the most exciting part was when I zoned out and then Kurt Angle's music hit and I got very confused. There was a brief moment of hope, and it was dashed quite quickly when an unfit 49-year-old Sergeant Slaughter sort of waddles down to the ring as opposed to marching. And I read that I had 17 odd minutes to still endure of the entire segment. And it just was... He clearly can't wrestle, so we weren't going to have a proper wrestling match. The whole boot camp gimmick would have really suited someone like Vader, I think, just because of the aggression that he had in his style. And it's kind of like, he's a good secret weapon, but I'm pretty sure at the time Vince had no interest in pushing Vader as a face. He had brought him over as a monstrous heel. The crowd were excited for them, and he wanted to dash that quite quickly, which is a shame, really, because he really would have suited the role.
Yeah. The only thing, I suppose, you think, I'm going back to the kind of story point again. If Triple H beat Vader in this kind of match, it would have been hard to swallow. But beating Sergeant Slaughter, and even worse, it gets China involved. He's cheating to win, and it's a match with no disqualifications, and he's still cheating to win. I think really helped Triple H.
100%, but arguably that could have been done in 7 minutes as opposed to 17.
Yeah,
it could have been a squash.
I agree with that.
That's kind of my thought on it. I think story-wise, it totally works out great, especially seeing that the other partner in the DX, Michaels, I mean, the main event, I'm pretty sure just got bashed together, so there's no much of a story of that at all, other than the fact that Ken Shamrock is someone not to be messed with kind of thing. So I think that is a plus, but it should have been a complete squash match. But then I suppose he wouldn't have been as a fun heel or face, whatever he was doing, if he had completely annihilated an old man. So again, what do I know?
I think the structure of the match was fine, but now you're right, it could have been a lot shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to disagree with you, Thomas. I think the match just moves at a glacial pace. I mean, you get the chairs, you get the salt in the eye, the ring bell, China. They pull at every stop they can to try and make this thing feel, like this big epic confrontation between old and new. And it's matches like this that solidify that kind of belief that I sometimes have with Triple H. It's not who he is, it's who he's working with.
Yeah.
If you put Triple H with someone great, you get a great match. If you put him with someone poor, you get a really, really poor match.
It is very recognise the game.
Sorry, was that Ollie?
Sorry, go on, Tom.
I was going to say, I think the fact that I watched this match in 2 parts might have helped. I put it on one morning, then I turned it off, went to work, and watched the rest of it later that day, so it didn't feel that long to me.
If you watch it in the round, it is absolutely the longest match ever.
This is what made me.
I watched a 1 hour wrestling match, and this was longer.
Yeah,
that's an Iron Man match. No pins yet.
I think I going back to the Triple H thing, from what I'd read and listened to and other sort of thing, is that it was Triple H that said it should be a gimmick match to make it believable that it could be a match. Like, he couldn't get his head round just squashing him. He probably just respected him and wanted to, because age-wise, he probably watched Sergeant Slaughter at the Garden or something like that, so he wanted to have a match with him, but obviously he couldn't work with him, so a gimmick is what makes sense. As much as you'd probably want to kind of see where Russo is at this point and who's booking this kind of thing, it's probably just more down to the fact that, it's Triple H probably, and again, who he's working with.
Yeah, because it didn't feel like Sergeant Slaughter was at all prepared for this match as well.
No.
Yeah, it's a slog. It's 1 out of 5.
Yeah, easy.
Right, Jeff Jarrett versus The Undertaker. This is Jeff's first match back with the company. He kind of looks like an ironed out Doc Hendricks.
Yeah.
As you ever watch The Simpsons, when you'll see like they'll take Grandpa and they'll pull his skin back and he'll look like Homer.
Yeah, that's what it's
I don't know if I ever really asked this on the last episode, but what do you guys make of Jeff Jarrett?
He did. I think what I said last time, and I've kind of solidified in this match, I think my opinion on Jeff Jarrett's never going to change. Solid mid-carder, reliable. You knew what to expect from him. You were never going to get a 5-star classic, but he filled the card quite nicely. Did his role well.
I just got to nip away for 2 seconds, because I'll be right back.
I kind of feel... I feel like there's a little bit of lost potential during this point in his career. I think he was definitely maybe capable of putting it on. I'm not sure if, though, his kind of experience... I think I'm thinking too much of later Jeff Jarrett, who was spoiled by ego. I would have liked to have seen him under the grip of like someone like Vince McMahon working a program kind of thing. Whereas, we never got to see that because, politics and whatever else kind of thing. I think that's kind of unfortunate.
He definitely feels like someone that you can just put into the bucket of mid-carder who deserved the push just because you wanted to see where it went. It's one of those, you could try him out.
He had the promo itself, actually, I felt like kind of reinforced that. Like, he had some really good... Well, again, you don't know if this is coming from a script or off the cuff. I liked the line about the cream rises to the top, but I just don't feel like he delivered it the way I would have liked him to, kind of thing.
Yeah.
The great heel part at the end of the match when he demands his hand to be raised despite the fact he just got embarrassed, that stuff as well, that's all great. I feel like if his experience had maybe just aligned and he had stuck with the Fed just a bit longer, we could have seen something really interesting, but instead we got what we got.
Yeah, it feels like that he was doing all the egotistical heel bits, but he wasn't buying it himself.
I mean, I don't know what he's meant to be dressed up like that, really.
He looked like an Art Deco building.
Is there supposed to be like a evangelical thing going on, like with him talking over his music? He sounds like a kind of almost like a preacher or something like that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with where he was at this point, to be perfectly honest with you, but I've always been gutted that we never kind of got to see a well-rounded Jeff Jarrett in the WWF whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say the highlight for me was the Kane entrance. Towards the end of the match. I just want to say, compared to today's booking, this entrance done in month 2 of the 6-month build-up for the match with Kane and Taker at Mania 14. I mean, for what it's worth, I think is a nice little throwaway match. It's nothing special, obviously. There's some nice selling by Jarrett in there. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It's one of the better matches on this program. It doesn't really drag.
Yeah, it was a vehicle for Kane versus Undertaker, but yeah, it was a good match. I think the introduction of Kane as well, it was a case of Saved by the Bell, but again, it didn't drag it on too long.
No, it kind of done what needed to be done, and I actually forgot Kane came out during this, so it was a nice surprise, and I totally forgot this was at the time where Kane came out regular, let alone Raw. He would just attack random wrestlers, and it got to that stage every week you were watching Raw at that time. You never knew if Kane was going to come out and when he was going to come out, and mercifully it usually came out during like a crush match or something, and kind of ended it. So it was a nice surprise to kind of see him come out here at the pay-per-view and end the match, and obviously he kind of slaps Taker. He doesn't punch him, doesn't clothesline him, doesn't it just slaps him. And Taker like kind of looks at him, you're like, they got to fight, and they're still not going to fight. They built that feud up so well that they just wouldn't have the patience for that these days. They'd be fighting it came with debut in October, and they'd be fighting in the main event in November.
Yeah.
I gave it 2.5 stars perfectly because it was a perfect conduit to get those two together and continue the storyline. I thought that was great. It was clear what they were going for. And, I mean, it's not a great match, but it was a fantastic bit of booking.
Next up, we have Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. It feels so surreal to say that the first Austin Rock match on pay-per-view was at fucking In Your House Degeneration X. What's your guys' favourite Austin and Rock confrontation? Personally, I got to go Mania 19. That's always the match that will be my favourite between the two of them.
Off the top of my head, I can't even think.
Well, there was the trilogy. There was obviously Mania 15, Mania 17, and Mania 19.
It's just been so long since I've seen them.
Mm-hmm.
But this match, this didn't feel like a match to me. This felt like an angle, even more so in the previous Taker Jarrett one, which obviously the whole point you were saying earlier was a vehicle for Kane and just to set up to further the feud. This didn't feel like a match. I think it's because Austin never took his vest off.
I think this was a complete. It was so crazy to get that amount of energy out of nowhere so quickly. It just shown how hot that Stone Cold was. And I think actually this is my favourite heel iteration of The Rock, because obviously when he tries to do it later in his career, he's just so over it, doesn't really connect with what he's trying to do, kind of thing. And I think he played it quite well. It wasn't much of a match, again, just reinforce what you were saying, but I understand it had to be so high up the card, but if you could have took that energy and placed it somewhere lower down, this would probably be a better pay-per-view overall, in my opinion. It was so great to watch. I've really kind of turned it around for me and actually made me think, right, I'm actually going to stay awake to watch the main event in one go.
See, I keep forgetting these two actually feuded in 1997. You get the opening package. I mean, it's not quite Limp Bizkit My Way promo, but it's a really good promo. I remember the spot with the pager where Rock turns around and gets the ball. For some reason, I keep forgetting that took place in 1997. I keep remembering that as like 99 when Rock had the world title. So it was a nice little. I mean, the fact that it merited its own package was really, really special. I mean, even less than a year after this, Survivor Series in 1998, Rock wins the world title. Less than a year from now, these two guys are going to be carrying the company. It feels like a natural progression.
I feel like that's abundantly clear when you watch it. Even though this is a DX interview, there was no way that Michaels could kind of hold on to that main event as much as he wanted to. He simply couldn't.
The transition is clear, and I mean the crowd are absolutely rabid for this. Rock's getting all the boos and the Rocky sucks chants, and Austin comes out and it's just like massive pop for him. Yeah, actually, although it's funny because the Nation are very involved in this match, that you almost forget they're part of the Rock's team because the Rock is so over. They almost feel like his bodyguards as opposed to a faction that he was the last one to join.
Well, yeah, I feel like one of the guys like Kama and D'Lo and Farouk, they don't get the props that they deserve for allowing themselves to be thrown around by Steve Austin. Because, I mean, if they were, at 10, they're at 20 after Austin's done with them, and there's not a proper ass in the building. It's like Canadian Stampede levels of fan interaction with this. I mean, it really is that good.
When Austin stunners D'Lo on top of the truck, the place just, you're like, this crowd's going to blow up.
Yeah.
It's going to explode.
I know we've talked about the Rock's selling and all that. I mean, again, I've mentioned this previously. It's not like he deserves, or it's not like he needs any praise from us. But there's a bit during the opening package where he sells like the pager alarm. Like his eyes just bulge out of his head. The minute he sees 136 and that on the pager and that. Like he's so naturally charismatic. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, let's play hypothetically here. Like, had The Rock injured himself, like, during or after this match, and that was it, that was his career finished through some freak accident, or took a pile driver wrong with that, do you think there would have been anybody that could have had that kind of yin-yang relationship with Austin?
At this stage, no.
Frustratingly, nothing comes to mind. Not hitting the same entertainment value. I think the big problem with Austin moving forward is this is post injury now. It's not the ringmaster. It's a lot more brawly, and I actually kind of struggled with a lot of Austin's matches after. He's the most entertaining guy going, and I love the character, everything, but there's a clear change in match quality where I think it's important who he gets paired up with, and I think The Rock was maybe just the best complement to that transition in style, just for me anyway.
No, I agree with that, and it's funny because like the most over Austin's ever been was post neck injury.
Yeah.
And if he was wrestling the same matches without that crowd participation, these matches would be a lot more forgettable. But because the crowd are so hot for him, he can throw a punch, a kick, stomp something in the corner, give him the finger, and people are treating it like it's an absolute classic. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, crowds make... I mean, we've seen it ourselves recently with wrestling. You can watch the best technical match in the world in an empty arena. It's not as good as Hogan The Rock for WrestleMania.
Yeah, the crowd makes all the difference.
Austin gets the win. One of the things that I like this match, it's a kind of solid 3 out of 5 match. I wish it had went on longer, but then I realised, it's Mania 15 and maybe a 17 and Mania 19. These matches are going to go on longer, so I really don't have any complaints with it. It does exactly what I said it was going to do.
I find it hard to score this one because it's not a match. Again, it's just a really good solid piece of booking because it does exactly that. It leaves you wanting more, and that's definitely how I felt. So I'm somewhere between 3 and 4 because it was so enjoyable and it was so well done. And they must have had plans to kind of just keep pushing and pushing and pushing because it was brilliant.
I was going to say, it dawned on me, this feels a lot like a kind of a prologue or a prequel. Like you can tell, here's the story before the actual story. It's like, sooner or later these guys are going to snowball and they're absolutely carry the company.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see the genesis of it. It's nice to look at it, and it's a bit green. It's looking at it. It's like I look at it. I know it's not a classic Rock Austin match, but it's nice to look at it knowing how big and how hot it'll get.
I would be totally. I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if I didn't bring up the fact that you could see some of the worst worked punches in the world coming from Farouk in this, by the way. It's worth a rewatch. It's really bad. Easily in my top 10. It was so distracting. It nearly killed it for me. But though Brock and Austin was just too magnetic to ruin it. And obviously the truck helped.
Yeah.
Finally, we get to the main event. Shawn Michaels versus Ken Shamrock. I know we said earlier on about Mark Merrow and Vader and that, but obviously Ken Shamrock has to be number 1 on the missed opportunities list. I keep swapping places with him and Vader, and Mark Merrow being like the constant number 3. But yeah, I mean, Shamrock, I can't understand why they didn't push him to the moon.
I think we've said before as well, and I was speaking to someone who said he was a nightmare backstage, but we talked about his MMA commitments.
Yeah.
Every In Your House we've watched, he's been there in some capacity.
I don't think he had commitments then. I don't think he had that kind of relationship. Because I saw him at a house show in Manchester.
Yeah.
He apparently one of the reasons this was thrown together is because they wanted a legitimate big program for Ken with HBK. I don't know if that was to maybe elevate HBK because we'll get into the match that. A lot of it doesn't make sense for myself, but apparently he struggled with commitments and they attributed that a lot to his MMA career. But I would take that with a pinch of salt because looking up his record at this point, I was nosy. He didn't actually return to an octagon or a ring in any shoot fight capacity until the year 2000, which is, crazy. His record at this point, by the way, because I had to do the math, was, oh my God, I've lost it. Never mind. That's gutting. I spent a good wee bit of time on that, but yeah, I think for me, this is a really interesting point. I'm again big martial arts fan as well. They had the segment earlier in the year where Dan Severn came on commentary and kind of spoke some words. At the point he was heavyweight NWA champion, and he'll come back in '98 with the Brock Lesnar gimmick. He comes in with the shoot fighting championships, like he gets a little weedy manager in the form of Jim Cornette, and then he's carrying all the belts, and then he walks in with a big tash. It could have worked so well. I feel like Dan Severn was a little bit of more of a missed opportunity. Even just in that, they totally wasted him. Ken Shamrock still has some memorable moments. Even just to have like a professional wrestling match, because I think that happened not too long ago. We finally got, in like the year 2020 when they were both past it, or 2019, we had Dan Severn versus Ken Shamrock in a professional wrestling ring, which is ridiculous because up to that point, I'm pretty sure they had fought twice and both had a win in an actual fight. I mean, it writes itself. It's just a complete wasted opportunity. I also struggled with this match. Obviously, you can't just go back in time and say this is how you should do it, but I would have really preferred a Brock Lesnar booking in this. Ken Shamrock is a professional wrestler and a fighter, kind of 50-50, so he was doing all the moves and stuff, but I just found it so unbelievable that someone of Shawn Michaels' size could, put Ken Shamrock in a wrist lock and hold him there. It was really difficult to watch. Even if he overcame it through some DX shenanigans, which they eventually do at the end anyway, I feel like that would have been much more effective than what we did get here.
But yeah, you turn around and saying Shawn Michaels is able to get the slip on someone the size of Ken Shamrock, and it's just like, no, and it's one of those, we talk about if you could book it, with booking Ken Shamrock, I'd have put the strap on him and gone for a Goldberg type angle, that he's this big dominant behemoth who can't be beaten, and each time you tune in to see whether someone like Shawn Michaels or Austin or The Rock is going to be able to get the better of this guy. But yeah, the fact that he was someone short and slippy like Shawn Michaels was able to get the run round on him, yeah, that was a bit.
No, I agree with both of you 100%, and I was a bit surprised at myself when watching it and thinking that, because I'm like, I was watching Bad Blood just the other week, and I had no problems whatsoever with Shawn Michaels getting one up over the Undertaker, but it worked in reference to the match. Here, it didn't seem believable in the same way. You need to suspend disbelief in one part of wrestling, but at the same time, you have to believe what's happening. And with this, it just didn't feel to me that Shawn Michaels was a match for Ken Shamrock in the way the match was booked.
Your suspension of disbelief can only go so far, and they've done such a good job with putting Shamrock over in the promo that is before this match. That was fantastic. The video package, sorry. That, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, it could have worked. And I remember it was funny because I haven't seen this match in a long time, haven't seen this pay-per-view in a long time, and I was really excited for this main event because I love Ken Shamrock, love Shawn Michaels, speaks for himself, and I thought to myself, and maybe I've got that kind of post-Lesnar tinted glasses on, where I was expecting more of a match like that, and instead I kind of got this kind of back and forth 50-50 type, well actually more Shawn kind of dominating. I know the whole idea that he'll dominate is supposed to be the thing for the babyface comeback, but not the way he was dominating. There wasn't enough kind of chicanery going on for them to be overpowering Ken Shamrock so easily.
Yeah, again, looking in the shadow of Lesnar, it's like, well, and yeah, it's one of those, when you look at what they did with Lesnar, it's like, why couldn't they do that with Shamrock?
That's not to say that I think Lesnar was booked to perfection, but it's the only believable way he could have came back, and I 100% kind of vibe on what they kind of done. If it could have been implemented with a Dan Severn or Ken Shamrock at the time to go up against what WCW ended up doing with Goldberg. I've actually found the record. So legitimately at that point, Shamrock had 23 wins, 5 losses and 2 draws, which would have put him somewhere in the region of one of the most successful mixed martial arts fighters in the world. And here comes HPK barely being able to stay sober to do his job. It's a complete I just obviously that's not in the storyline, but even just looking at them physically, there was that point where they put the wrist lock on. I immediately switched off.
Yeah, because Ken Shamrock looked frightening. He always looked scary, and yeah, like you said, there should have been DX style shenanigans, but you could have had Shamrock absolutely squashing HBK, and right when Shamrock's about to finish him off, just have China hit the low blow.
Yeah. I mean, it would have saved Shamrock for the future, because they did still use him. So, you're going to need that big scary face. And it would have saved DX and kind of re-pushed all the funny shenanigans stuff. Like, it would have worked perfectly. So the match we ended up getting, it doesn't really click, other than the fact that Shamrock was, a trained professional wrestler and probably wanted... He probably was up for what went down, kind of thing. We need to remember that what happened with Lesnar years and years later was quite extreme, and even to this point, you can still be on the end of your seat, even though we have now seen it for the best part of a decade.
I've got my own theory as to why, Shamrock never achieved the heights he was. I mean, here's the thing: you can stick Shamrock with someone like The Rock, who's an excellent seller, and can make both guys look great. I think the Office purposefully kept Shamrock and Austin away from one another. And I think the reason for that was obviously at the time they were pushing Austin to the moon. Obviously, he beat Taker clean, he beat Shawn clean at that. His whole rise was built around the fact that he didn't tap out to the sharpshooter. He rather would let himself pass out with pain than actually submit. Having Shamrock give the angle lock to Austin would have done nothing for Austin. Having him submit clean in the middle of the ring would have killed Austin at this time, and I just want to believe that. I mean, obviously, he's you look at Shamrock and you think money. I mean, he's got the haircut that you can set your watch to during the opening package. His suplexes look like silk, and that's the quickest. I mean, he does suplexes better than Kurt Angle, but I think that was one of the reasons was with Austin there. You couldn't have had Austin and Shamrock work with one another because it would have been like the two badasses, and one of them has to lose clean and can't do a finish forever. So they chose Austin.
That makes sense.
What a weird situation when you look at the sort of landscape now that we just keep coming back to this consensus that there just wasn't enough room for everybody. It's a good problem to have, I suppose, but a lot of wasted potential.
And Shamrock went on, you mentioned Dan Severn being the NWA champion. Shamrock did go on to be the first ever TNA champion when he won the NWA championship at their first ever event. So he has held a world title.
Yeah.
Just never here.
Yeah, Cammy, I picked up on your was Shawn Michaels high this match, in the run up to this match. One of the things that I noticed in the because I'd seen this match before, but I didn't actually fully acknowledge Shawn's pill habit in the opening package on Raw when he's sitting he sounds high as a fucking kite.
Yeah,
he is pulled up to the gills. It's like his speech is so slurred. It's like he's playing at 0.25% speed. It's like he does the whole thing was Ken Shamrock.
I was about to say, what that Raw segment
by the angle, it's like it's so. Oh, it really hurts to see Shawn at this time.
Where they're doing the bit where they're twisting his ankle, it's a case of, is this a fake leg or is he that pilled up that you can do?
I was also thinking as well, did they film that in an empty arena? Because there was like no crowd reaction to that whole promo that Shawn was doing.
And it went on just a wee bit too long as well. It started to get really awkward.
Yeah, it's just how many twists? Just twist the ankle once. That'd be fine. That'd be funny.
Because I wasn't laughing out loud funny, but you went, oh, okay. And then it kind of just kept going.
Oh, yeah, I had a sneer at the first twist. I was like, yeah, that's good. That's a good little bit. And then it was kind of, just fucking stop twisting the ankle, man. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but it's very easy to imagine Vince watching that from Gorilla and giving it the big
That's just shit.
There's one more horrible market moment I need to bring up where HBK put a sleeper hold on Ken Shamrock and he was too short to crank his neck. But obviously this is professional wrestling, so Shamrock just started doing this, and that was the point where I really checked out. It was horrendous. Like he was on his tiptoes as high as he could possibly be with the hand. It was. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna take a moment.
It wasn't worked well, was it?
No, not at all.
I mean, talk about good sellers. Shamrock's a very underrated seller. This is a guy who we've mentioned many times here is legitimate and can take. We've all seen him take a punch. We've all seen him take a kicking, and just like as if it's nothing, and keep coming. In a wrestling match, though, you give him a chop, and he sells it like he's been shot, and not in a believable way. That I mean, I don't mean kind of over the top like backflip out the ring, Ric Flair type idea, but I thought he was a very good seller, Shamrock.
Speaking of backflips and rings, there was a Hurricane Rana in there from Shamrock as well. No, it wasn't great, but you know, for someone of his size to do that was maybe not on par with Lesnar doing a shooting star press, but impressive.
Definitely something.
Yeah.
I love Sean's DX armour in this match. I know that's a weird little costume detail, but I actually think that was his best look. And as far as I think the black and the green colour scheme really suited him with the grizzle. And that, it was a really cool little look. One of the things I actually noticed was from Survivor Series at this time and then Mania 14, there's a weird thing where, you know, the WWE is obsessed with kind of peeling back the curtain a wee bit, and you actually see the camera following Sean from his dressing room to the point where behind Gorilla, and then he goes out. We talk about peeking behind the curtain, but this, you know, this is a month removed from Brett leaving the company. It kind of feels like this is Sean at his realest. Like, you know, there's a bit where there's the woman down the entrance ramp and he yells at her to get out of the way. It's very shoot style Sean at this point. I feel like this is as close as we're going to get to all the stories we've heard about Sean from behind the curtain. This is, you know, there's a bit where he calls Jim Ross Garth Brooks. And that, you know, that's definitely real Sean.
What was the concept here? Because I mean, you guys we were having a conversation about his book kind of thing. Did they feel like he had won, like all of his whining? He was finally kind of with the Montreal thing and carrying the belt. Did they feel like he was untouchable or something like that? Like,
well, it was in the book. It kind of chronicles around about this time. It was a mixture of pills that, you know, it gave him this kind of vein of confidence. He admits himself in the book that he didn't like being on his own. And he had a real problem with being on his own in hotel rooms and that, and he was so self-destructive that he didn't like himself and all that. And, you know, again, the road schedule, because I think Sean had been wrestling for like 14 years, you know, at this point. And, you know, you go back and watch those old Raw episodes, it's always the Shawn Michaels match or the Bret Hart match that gets up getting pulled up as the best of the night. I mean, you know, he did things during, you know, house shows that he didn't have to do. You know, he would do backflips, he would do these 40-minute barn burners and that, and it just feels like by this point he was, I mean, I think he'd been miserable since 95. Like, even at the point where he'd won the title, he was already sort of semi-burnt out. That this is definitely kind of, he's got no restraint. Obviously, his arch rival has left. You know, it's like, you know, he probably does feel that kind of air of confidence. All right, now I'm the locker room leader, I'm going to call the shots.
I mean, it's really hard to like the guy, especially at that time, but you've got to kind of feel from, when you put it in that context, the timing of when he finally gets the strap uncontested, there's this guy coming right up behind him called Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he must have been able to tell that his days were numbered, especially when you're looking at crowd reactions and stuff.
Well, yeah, another thing I was going to say is without Brett, obviously the yin and yang relationship with those two, even though they absolutely loathed one another and despise one another on and off camera, it feels like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, they needed each other.
Yeah, but there has to be a Brett for there to be a Sean. And I'm not saying, you know, I mean, without Sean, Brett pretty much floundered in WCW as well. And that was because he didn't have that Sean relationship with anybody. And, you know, especially here, I mean, he'll get injured a month later at the Royal Rumble, and then that's pretty much him cooked till Mania 14. But they needed one another. That's fun enough, as much as they hated one another. Yeah.
I think, going back on what Cammy said as well, spoke about loathing him and the fact that he was a big asshole. You do feel for him because, he was wrestling 14 years straight. He's got probably a couple of $1 million in the bank. He's been told he's the best in the world, and yet he's going out there every night and being smacked about for 40 minutes. And how would you cope with that? Other than anything apart from painkillers and booze, just to keep the show moving as it was.
It's quite interesting as well. You kind of mentioned the Brett and Sean thing, that for Sean's first two title reigns, he had no Brett. First time, Brett was just taking a leave of absence after WrestleMania 12, came back at Survivor Series 1960 to Austin. The same night, Sean drops the belt to Sid, and then obviously when Montreal happens, Brett's gone, and you never get that kind of post-match feud again.
Well, the first strain with Michaels all Sean had to do, the only person that Sean really had to work with was Bulldog, who had already done the circuits with nearly a year straight in '95 with the IC title anyway. So it doesn't really matter. And then, you get the second reign where, he loses his smile, hands the belt over to Vince. It doesn't really mean anything. And then obviously you get the third reign after Montreal. And 2 months later, he herniates 2 discs in his back and completely crushes one. And so he's off television for 2 months. And then has the 20-minute match. No, I don't think it's even 20 minutes. It might even be 10 minutes, the match with Austin. And it's quite fun. When we were watching Mania 14, there was the whole thing, is his back really, really hurting that? I think he might be faking it. And then we get 10 minutes into the match and he takes the turnbuckle spot where he goes back first, pelvis first, into the top turnbuckle. And that's after that, it's not work anymore. Yeah. I mean, I remember Oliver, saying like, oh no, he's fucked.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable to watch at a certain point.
So I feel like it's quite like, Sean won the belt 3 times, but in my mind, it's always like I only ever remember him winning it once, and that was the '96 run I had with him.
Probably good to bring up as well that so this is December '97. That's Starrcade, and it's also the beginning, but also the beginning of the end of just any hopes anyone must have had, or at least a whiff of, all right, it's not going to go well for Brett either, kind of thing. Again, another kind of just show of wasted potential in that either kind of thing. I don't know. I think that's ridiculous to kind of say that, actually, wasted potential, because it's Bret Hart, but
I think you're back on the money with that. I mean, Bret talks about any book. The first thing Bret does when he lands in WCW is be the referee for Hogan versus Sting, which does absolutely nothing for Bret, because obviously coming off the back of Montreal, I mean, Montreal was like the most famous thing that happened in wrestling general at the time, despite the fact they were getting their ass kicked in the ratings. Nobody could stop talking about Montreal, and you get a guy with that much momentum that you paid $2.5 million a year to sign. And, there's a whole theory that, Hogan got whiff of how much money that they were paying Bret. And, suddenly the whole Hogan-Bret program, that's not going to work for me, brother. But, yeah, I really feel like Montreal actually hurt both of them, despite the fact that obviously I did hurt Bret.
I think Bret went into WCW at the wrong time as well, because the hottest feud in wrestling was Sting and Hogan. They've been building it for a year. There was nothing that was ever going to derail that. And I could see why they wanted to utilise Bret Hart by putting him into that feud in a way, rather than kind of do their own thing. Because it was all, they couldn't do anything with Bret at that time. It was going to give Bret the star power he deserved. And I can see why they kind of try to put him in lazily with the crooked referee angle and try and maybe kind of riff off Montreal a little. But it is disappointing that Bret's big profile pay-per-view debut in WCW as a referee.
Yeah,
it is disappointing.
It does make sense, the angle, but then you've got to ask, even if they had achieved it and not messed it up so badly, would it really, I suppose they had to use them because it was white hot at the time, and that was the best they could come up with. I personally can't see any other space for him there. You couldn't shove him down the card because he's this big name and it belittles him, but at the same time, WCW was more than justified to see through the Sting and Hogan angle and put that right at the top of the card.
Yes, so not long after this, we would get the 1998 Royal Rumble where Shawn takes the bump on the casket and obviously, fucks his back up. I know we talk about it's the back bump that inadvertently, butterfly effect ended up saving Shawn's life.
Yeah.
So then, he takes the long sabbatical and ends up saving his back. I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to say it's the broken back that ended up saving the WWF, because it sort of forced them into a spot where, okay, Shawn's injured. We got to push Austin to the moon. I mean, let's say, for argument's sake, with Shawn at this time especially, he doesn't want to drop the belt to Austin. He doesn't drop it, and then he decides that he's just going to hand it over on television to Vince. He gets sick of WWF, and he ends up heading to WCW, and then, you're left without anyone to put over or push Austin to the moon. There was an article I was reading not that long ago where they were talking about Mania 14, and they said it had to be Shawn that put Austin over. It couldn't have been anybody else. It couldn't have been Undertaker, because that wouldn't have felt Undertaker to put over the new guy. It couldn't have been Bret, because Bret was gone. It had to be Shawn. Shawn was the last kind of lifeline of the new generation that had to help Austin become who he was.
You needed a big company guy to pass the torch to the big company guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it would have been the same, but I mean, I think this pay-per-view is an example enough to show he was already well on his way to the moon, and I don't think Michaels could have stopped that no matter how much he kicked his feet. But it would have been totally different. Him putting over Austin, whether he liked it or not, was massive.
And I think Sean's selling, as much as we love it and as much as we say it, that didn't do any favours. Especially, I mean, I remember there was this point in this bout where he gets Irish whipped into the turnbuckle, and then he goes over the turnbuckle and he keeps on rolling backwards until he's like halfway up the entrance ramp.
Yeah.
As much as I love Sean selling, it's like you don't have to do that much.
No.
Just you can dial it back a little bit.
I'm never sure when he does things like that, because people always talk about him versus Hogan at SummerSlam, where obviously that was his main intention, was for it to look ridiculous. And sometimes I think these are little seeds that's exactly what his intentions are. I don't know. I feel like sometimes, I think just because I've got this image of the guy in my head, he is kind of just, his head's that big that he feels he can play about a bit and make a fool of people.
There's the disqualification finish, so technically Shamrock will win. You get the run-in by DX in China. We get Owen's return, which is, I think, a really underrated return where he bumps Sean. Sean takes the big fly into the Spanish announcer's table, destroys it, and hits him with shoot punches. Like I was listening to the Bruce Pritchard podcast. Those were real punches that Owen was giving Sean, and they look absolutely brutal.
Yeah, he was properly going for it, and that made it all the more better.
It's one of the best angles I think the WWF have ever done, especially in this era, because it looked, everything about it looked real. It catches Sean off guard. The punches are real. The camera's slow to track it. Like, yeah. It's not like they go, oh my god, what's happening in the crowd? Somebody's jumped the ring, and the camera. Everything looks so off the cuff. It was legit in many ways. Apart from the security kind of coming over and grabbing him off, even the way Triple H went over and tried to kind of grab him, as if he didn't know what to do. Did I attack him? Did I push him? Was that Owen Hart? It seemed really unnerved and shocked about what happened. I thought the whole thing was brilliant, and obviously Sean's got the kind of cut nose, and he looks shaken up about what's just happened. I think this is absolute genius how they played it. Absolute genius.
Yeah, I feel like even though you've got the odd chemistry with Michaels and Shamrock, like why would Shamrock ever, be allowing himself to get thrown about by this little guy? I feel like it's a 4 out of 5 match. I really like it.
The angle bumps it up for me at the end, because when I'm kind of rating it here, I'm taking into account everything that's happened in the whole thing, like to the end of the pay-per-view almost. And the match was just kind of there in many ways, but the Owen Hart bit at the end, I'm counting that as part of the whole thing, and I thought that was just absolute genius. That bumped it up for me.
Yeah, I'd give it 4 out of 5 as well.
I'm struggling to kind of, the match itself, there's issues with that, but when you compare it to the rest of the night, it is probably the most put together, and the angle 100% just sort of pushes it up for myself. I completely agree with everything that Thomas said, and it probably pushes up to maybe a light 4 kind of thing. Struggle to give it any more than that.
Yeah, so overall, what do we make of In Your House DX? It's quite funny reading about this and hearing that it got kicked about the press at the time. Like, this was a really badly reviewed pay-per-view. But I have to say, having watched Bad Blood, this is available 2.5 out of 5. For me, it's perfectly acceptable. Not as good as In Your House 1 that we did last week. But
I'd probably guess maybe overall 3 out of 5 as a pay-per-view. But it did the job. There's a lot of good angles in it. I mean, a lot of the matches were kind of forgettable, but a lot of good angles. It really kind of helped fulfill the story. It was good to see these sort of angles on a pay-per-view like this as well, not just being put on Raw every week.
Yeah, I'd give it 3 out of 5 as well. It wasn't particularly amazing, but yeah, it was enough to hold your interest. There were some good matches in there, and there was a good main event.
For myself, I think the biggest one you could have done is taken that second match out there, replaced it with something with a little bit more pace. That probably would have shot it right up there. Because for me, the only thing that's putting it at a 3 out of 5, which I will give it, is the angles. Owen coming back and Kane coming in. If it wasn't, and the Austin match was fantastic. Well, it wasn't a match, but it was fantastic. That's the only thing that's got a 3 for me, to be honest with you, because it wasn't much of a pay-per-view in terms of matches and wrestling.
Right, getting in a little ending segments piece. Undertaker on if he ever got physical backstage in WWE when he became the locker room leader by Marco Rivera of WrestlingInc.com. Right, I'd really like to use this as a framing device so that we can talk about The Last Ride, episode 3. What did you guys make of it?
I really enjoyed just Taker and the rest of them shooting on that Crown Jewel, Greatest Royal Rumble, Royal Rumble match. Because, looking back on it, I mean, Jesus Christ, like, what absolute fucking nightmare that match was. So, but I do like the fact that The Undertaker is the dead man. You can't kill him. You can't finish him off. And this series just seems to follow that he's The Undertaker, he's the dead man. He just can't seem to retire. He just cannot get that perfect match where, because he was talking about the Michaels match at Mania 25, 26, where he ended Sean's career, and he was talking about how jealous he was that HBK got to go out like that, and I think that's all he wants. He's not wrestling because he's just not able to accept he's past his prime. He wants that perfect finish.
I have to admit, I loved this episode. I didn't like episode 2 as much as that. Episode 2 just felt like kind of jogging in place, like filler. We've got to get to 5 episodes, but episode 3 felt like a real return to form. I feel like one of the weird things I picked up on was, even though Taker's been on camera for 30 years, in the first episode he's quite introverted and that's on his career, whereas in episode 3 he's really come out of his shell.
Yeah,
it seems he has more on-screen confidence. And I just thought it's bizarre that in the space of a couple of months, because he's spent such a stoic character on television in the 30 years prior to this, whereas now it's like it's just him allowed to be him. He's allowed to like banter with his wife. She pursued him and all that. Like you really get this humour to him that you maybe wouldn't have got in episodes 1 and 2.
Yeah, again, the weirdest thing is realising and knowing that The Undertaker is not some immortal pallbearer from Death Valley. He's just Mark Calloway from Texas.
Yeah.
I think they've done a great job of just, even for the wrestling world, to transition this constant character. That he's felt immortal almost because you could rely on him. He was always a constant, like he was just there, a constant, and to transition him into being Mark, the human. I feel like it's probably actually a big step in kind of putting a full stop on the end of his career, despite the fact he doesn't seem to want to do that. I think you'll find that transition a lot easier now that he's put a lot of things in context. I personally, just like Oliver did, enjoyed just someone who clearly has got a lot of clout. He can shoot on what he wants, and shooting on the Saudi Arabian stuff, because I don't think we've really gotten anything otherwise apart from some.
We don't really get a whole lot of self-deprecation. WWE. If you watch a lot of their documentaries, like regarding the Monday Night Wars, that is very, very pro WWE. Like I can understand a company not wanting to shoot itself in the foot, but I guess they're kind of a nauseating point where you're like, all right, WWE, we get it, you're great. Whereas with this, it's like I don't really go back and say, okay, that match was the shits. I really, really liked Kane and Undertaker's little. We got 3 words for you. Go fuck yourselves.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
That was fun.
It's weird to do a belly laugh, like watching WWE's now.
Again, it was just the mask slipping and the curtain coming back, and I was like, oh yeah, he's a real person.
Even the shot of them when they were at the Saudi Arabia arena, and it's just the 4 of them wearing baggy t-shirts and like nice shorts and that. I just think it's just such an odd image to see the 4 of them simultaneously walking up the walkway together, and that. And it's just like just palling about. But I'm pissed off. We have to wait until the 14th of June for the next episode. But I can't help but feel that this is all a work
and it is leading up to Taker planning his perfect last match, which might be Mania next year.
It could be, but again, with how many more matches can he physically do before it's? I mean, again, it's going back to episode 1. There was the whole thing where he would go out and work a match, and backstage he was drizzling at both ends, according to show and that. But yeah, again, in this it's very, very. And again, another thing is Undertaker has simultaneously not stopped doing interviews since episode 1 of Last Ride came out. Like, I'll refresh YouTube, and it's seemingly like every minute he's done a new 17-minute shoot interview with some thing regarding, Hogan not wanting a job to him at Survivor Series 91 or something like that. Or, during Survivor Series 97, where it was like he had to go and get Vince at the locker room to go and talk to Brett and that. But it feels like even though he did that, it's the power that Vince has to say, okay, Mark, now you don't have to be Undertaker anymore, you can go and be Mark Calaway. It really speaks to their relationship with one another.
I agree with Oliver, even if it's just making himself. I mean, it's not that he wasn't a likable character, but it's hard to connect with, the Undertaker because he doesn't talk, he doesn't do anything. When he finally does go out, he's old school. He'll go out on his back, even if it's just a squash and he's putting someone over to the moon. I think he'll be happy with that, with having a bit more of a deeper connection with the fans, being Mark as opposed to, a pallbearer from Death Valley.
Yeah.
Even though we do have to wait that little bit longer for the next episode, I feel like it's going to be worth it, because I feel like he's going to bury the fuck out of Goldberg. And I think we've all been waiting for that for a long time, because apparently, according to the dirt sheets, these two had a very heated exchange when they got back to the Gorilla after that match. And again, if Mark was being recorded 24/7, hopefully footage from that confrontation exists. So yeah,
fingers crossed.
100%.
Last little thing I'll talk about before we wrap this up. Mike Tyson pushes WWE legend Chris Jericho after ripping off his shirt, as ignites a mass brawl live on TV. So could his mooted return take place inside a wrestling ring by Jordan Stewart of Daily Mail?
I hope not.
You tagged me in that thing on the WrestleWatch Instagram page of Tyson falling asleep during the Cody Rhodes Lance something match. What a complete debacle this was.
Do you know, it's been in TNT, when AEW Dynamite first started, the first thing a lot of people went and said was, this reminds me of WCW Nitro. It's got that real WCW feel to it. It was a good way. You have Shivani and JR doing commentary. There was something about the production of it. It just had this real WCW feel. At their best, if they're going to have Tyson versus Jericho, that's WCW, the Russo years. Now, I don't just blame Russo for that entirely. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but the Russo years is categorised by a certain time period.
Yeah.
If they're going to, the fact that they brought Tyson back as it is, I said last week, I thought that was a strange point. I mean, how many other big name boxers could you have got that are current and very famous for some star power? But bring back the Tyson's Tyson, we all know that, but he's also not Tyson anymore.
I feel like having actually went back and watched a couple of more episodes of AEW, I feel like I might have been too nice to it. I think maybe because we're so naturally desperate for a number two to the WWE, that we're willing to take anything. And this one of the things this reminded me of was the Karl Malone, Dennis Rodman tag team match with Hogan and DDP from Nitro. This really feels like clutching at straws.
Yeah, last week, bringing Rodman on to Nitro. That was back when Rodman was a superstar. And like I said to you last week, it's a case of kids are going to look at their dad and be like, "Who's that old man with a face tattoo?"
Yeah, I think Butterbean had more star power DX than Tyson had in 2020.
As much as I slag it, and as much as it's like a horrible fever dream, I want to see Jericho Tyson. Anything on this earth, I want to see Jericho Tyson.
I don't think that there's enough growth hormone in the world to allow Tyson to be athletic enough to do that, for one. Secondly, when he went to rip off that shirt, the face he pulled immediately destroyed all my childish dreams about a Tyson return, because you got that great video that circulated on the internet of him being a warrior and just giving the best unintentional promo of his life about how the gods have allowed his ego to be set aside to come back once more and stuff. And then he went to tear that shirt and it was awful. I think the best thing AEW could have done is, interestingly enough, I don't know if you've noticed, but Tyson walked out with Vito Belfort, Rashad Evans, and most importantly, Henry Cejudo, who he might not have the star power, sort of, but he just relinquished his bantamweight, I think, belt from the UFC. He's literally, as of a day gone from that, he retired. He was a two-time multi-division champion, held his belt, technically had a more successful run than Conor McGregor. He's a gold Olympic medalist, and he's definitely got promo power. You know, he's everything he done outside the octagon was very gimmicky and stuff. I think he could actually be a very, very good professional wrestler. Apart from the fact that I think he might be a generous 5'0" maybe. Apart from that, that would have been a much more interesting choice than this kind of WCW-esque. Let's just bring out this kind of, gimmicky Mike Tyson out because WWF done it 20, 30 years ago. I don't know.
Exactly, that's the problem. Bringing Tyson out 20 years ago, that was money.
Yeah.
That was huge.
What everyone forgets with the 98 appearance, that was when he was still on his temporary suspension after the Evander Holyfield incident. So it wasn't like he was laxed for time or that. That was just something a gap. But whereas now it's outside of the hot box and with Mike Tyson podcast.
The thing is, I always see you're saying like you really want to see this more than anything. I don't, but I know I'd watch it, and I'm probably what's wrong with wrestling at that stage. But what I want to see is a worked boxing match with Jericho and Tyson.
I just want to see them come together in some sort of match because I know it's going to be fucking terrible. But I just how terrible it's not a case I want to see it because it's going to be a Titans match. It's going to be, I want to see how deep the rabbit hole goes.
There's a lot of rumours circulating now as to what Tyson's actually up to. Like, it sounds like he's legitimately going to have a fight, whether it be in the bare knuckle boxing league with Tito Ortiz or Vanderlei Silva. But imagine if he went back to a sort of professional fighting realm and he won, and then he done AEW. It would be a totally different situation.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, it's an old man struggling to tear a top off and making a weird face while doing it. That's kind of the thing, is the timing. They probably saw him, knew they could grab him, got him. If they maybe put him in the back pocket now, see what he does. If they brought him back, it'd be huge. I would think, he'd be in the... Sorry.
Thinking about at this stage as well, obviously they've got him pre-booked in advance, that probably as well, but he walks out an empty stadium for this kind of angle, which is everything about it. Just, I don't want to keep slagging WCW here as a big WCW fan back in the day, but this reeks of latter days WCW, when they were just throwing stuff at the wall and throwing money at the wall and trying their best to do something different, and it just looked weird and daft.
There was a bit of it stank of that, unfortunately. I would agree.
No one might get Saudi Arabia's AEW show with Tyson and Jericho.
Maybe.
Again, some Saudi prince who is just like, again, he's got his wrestling figures out, but now he's just like throwing different figures into the mix, and it's like...
It's your Tyson versus Jericho, G.I. Joe versus Goldust.
I can't wait to see Hogan Captain America.
I think it's important to mention as well that if they did invest in an angle like this, they'll be wasting... Jericho's not got long left. They're wasting precious time building up other players that they've got in their arsenal kind of thing. And at the end of the day, that's one of the things that WCW really kind of failed at, was to build new stars. And I think for AEW's future is one of the more important things that they should be kind of focusing on. I understand you've got all these indie darlings that are there at the moment, but again, these are people that have killed themselves on the road for long enough. They're not going to stick about forever. They're not going to have the same career trajectory as a lot of the WWE guys that we're used to will have.
And people can slag WWE all they want, and they can put a lot of kind of hate on them for X, Y, and Z, but they have done quite well at building new stars. Now, you can argue how big these stars are, but they have gave a lot of younger guys chances and pushed them to the moon, whether it be Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. Dean Ambrose was champion, people forget that.
Yeah.
Obviously, what they kind of done with Wyatt the first time wasn't the greatest, but the Fiend stuff's been great. Drew McIntyre's getting a big put. There's a lot of young talent there. Our guys are going to be in the company for at least another 5 years, easy.
Aye, Cammy, getting back to what you said about Chris Jericho, it seems like they're purposefully keeping him and Cody Rhodes as far apart from one another they can as they now. I think the whole idea is to do a program with them later on down the road and establish Cody Rhodes as the go-to guy.
Yeah.
Put over it. Like there's currently they've got Cody feuding with this guy Lance Archer or something like that. And his whole deal is, he's this big kind of monster that they're pushing, and he's the one that Jake the Snake has came back to manage. And
Yeah.
it actually sort of reminded me of when Harley Race managed Vader in early WCW. So I think the whole idea is to have those two kind of do the whole thing with one another. But I think they're in the process of making new stars. It just, as with everything, it takes time.
All those things, that sounds amazing. Being outside of it, that does sound really interesting. I'm going to look into that. But I mean, at the end of the day, they've got a rival product, and as much as they want to pretend they don't want to be WWE, who doesn't want to be WWE? And at the end of the day, the only star that's capable of getting them there is Jericho. Cody isn't there, not in my opinion. He's a great worker. He's a great talker. He's brilliant for there, but they'll never be bigger than they are if they don't start using Jericho effectively and putting people over. Because I feel like the clock's really ticking on the guy personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And Cody Rhodes is a great worker and a great talker, but he's never had the star power that Jericho has. Like, I remember him being a very capable mid-carder in WWE, and then he just disappeared.
And he's even booked himself as a capable mid-carder in AEW. That's his character. He had a match a while ago, means if he lost, he could never compete for the title ever again. Now, obviously, that's going to change at some point, but he's essentially booked himself as the mid-carder in his own company.
Maybe there is some logic to that, though, of having a guy that can never move up but can constantly put people over at a mid-card level. Maybe there is some logic to that. It doesn't sound like a bad thing to me, but it is kind of funny that even he doesn't trust himself to be up in the big bright lights.
So what do you reckon, guys? In your house to the Lumberjacks next week?
That'll be good. That'll be interesting.
Quite fun.
I it's kind of contrasted back and forth for the Degeneration era.
Yeah, definite.
Excellent, guys. Excellent. Right, I'm just going to sign off now. Right, guys.
Take it easy, boys. See you next week.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks.